Wake Up in Paradise, Chapter 5, The Search. The governor's ball was the conversation for days. Renaud talked about the cars he had driven. In fact, he seemed more excited about the close-up and personal experience with the Lamborghini than the money he made on tips and private gambling. All of the parking attendants had engaged in games of chance, while the inside help was slaving away at the ball. Islanders were not permitted to gamble in the casinos. Nevertheless, they had their own private games and wagers. Renaud freely boasted of his winnings at the family dinner table, and despite the strict morality of the elder Chevals, Anne had never heard anyone in the family censure him for gambling. At work, Anne listened to the stories being told and retold by those who had been at the ball. At the same time, she found herself reluctant to share her dance with her charming prince. "It will be our secret," he had promised. Every time she relived their dancing together, it gave her goosebumps. No, she decided, this was something she would not share with anybody, not even Paida. Carline, one of the newest maids on Anne's floor, told her of the drama that the family was currently experiencing. They were trying to get some information on a relative who had boarded a transport boat to Florida. Unfortunately, the mother and child disappeared en route to their destination. Carline's father was working with the American consulate to find out information on the missing woman and her child. "Will the American consulate find out these things for anybody?" Anne inquired after listening with interest. "I guess so," the girl replied. "There's a missing persons report that you can file, and they send them everywhere. They can get them on the computer in minutes from any country. It's amazing." "Where is this missing persons office? At the police station?" Anne asked. "We went to the government building," Carline answered, "but so far we haven't found out anything. We only know that she was on the ship with little Raphael." After discovering that there was a missing persons department, in fact, a whole international embassy at the island governor's palace, Anne decided she would try to find out if she might be listed as a missing person. And despite the problem of having no name to look for on this list, the determined young woman wanted to see the missing persons list. If she spied the name that was hers, it might prompt some memory recall. It was worth the effort, she reasoned. After asking for an entire day absent from work, and with the approval of her newly adopted family, Anne caught an early morning ride into the city with Papa. He left her with a reminder that if she wanted to ride home, she should be waiting for him when he left for home that evening. With a happy wave of her hand, Anne set off on foot to her destination, the opulent governor's palace that could be seen on the hillside from anywhere in the city. Even this early in the day, there was an ever-increasing flow of traffic. In addition, the sun was already hot overhead, and the ocean breeze was strong enough to play havoc with a twisted knot at the back of Anne's uncovered head. This morning, the lost refugee without a memory was beginning to feel like she had always been on this island. She no longer used the henna dye on her hair or her skin. Her acceptance as one of the Cheval clan was accepted, and it no longer mattered if the red of her hair was dark or lightened gold by the sun. Her skin was now browned naturally from her days of helping Renaud gather his wood on the beach. Purposefully, Anne strolled up the narrow street past the main square, where the shop vendors were busy opening their produce and souvenir stalls. In the distance, she could see the outlines of the cruise ships that would soon be bringing their passengers into the city. She leisurely walked along the bricked road, her soft India cloth skirt swishing against her ankles. Earrings of seed and shells that Peta gave her bounced merrily against her neck. With a polite smile and a wave of her hand, Anne greeted the handsome traffic guard as she passed him. When the man returned the smile, her smile became broader. She had to admit that she liked the attentive way that his eyes were following her. Climbing the glistening granite steps to the front portico of the old world-style government building, Anne paused midway to admire the artfully landscaped flowers and palm greenery. It was a picture as beautiful as any of the postcards that were sold in the hotel lobby. Then for another brief moment she stepped back away from the door, gazing back at the road she had just traveled. It seemed surreal that she felt she belonged to all of this. Nevertheless, now that she was here at her destination, Anne found that she was not sure if she wanted to continue her search. Things were going so well, perhaps she should let sleeping dogs lie. At the same time, another voice reminded her that she was no weak-kneed sissy. There was not a boogeyman she could not face down, or any den of bears she could not enter if she had to. So why, she asked herself, was she standing outside the door, acting like a scared rabbit? Anne inhaled a deep breath, and grasping the ornate handle of the heavy stained glass door, she entered the cool, dim foyer. It opened into a wide hall. A desk was strategically stationed in the center of the space. Any visitor who entered would have to pass either to the right or left of that desk. "Can I be of assistance?" a voice said. An attractive middle-aged woman behind the desk greeted Anne. This woman was obviously a receptionist meant to stop any visitor who entered the premises and find out their business in the building. "I'm looking for the missing persons department," Anne explained. "Are you filing a claim?" the woman asked. Sharp eyes surveyed Anne from behind rimless bifocals. No, it's nothing like that," she responded. Although the woman had a pleasant demeanor and was rather small in stature, she definitely spoke with the authority of the guardian of the hallowed hall. At a loss for words to say to gain admission, Anne smiled inanely at the woman. Then the woman rose abruptly from her seat behind the desk and looked past her. "Good morning, Mr. Delacroix," the receptionist intoned loudly, transferring her attention from Anne to the newcomer. Anne pivoted slightly, following the gaze of the woman. "Hilda," a man answered. A slim, impeccably dressed man approached the two women and nodded to the older woman with a warm smile on his face. Then a look of surprise broadened that smile. The man turned his attention from the woman named Hilda and fixed his dark, rimmed eyes on Anne, and her stomach dropped into her shoes. The man was even more handsome in full daylight, in a light summer business suit, than he had been in the dark, romantic moonlight in full dress tux. His tanned face had the golden brown hue of the women who sunbathed around the hotel pool daily, oiling themselves carefully at short intervals to maintain the desired shade. His short-cut hair, the color of soft brown, was brushed back away from his square forehead. His smile exposed perfectly aligned teeth, gleaming white against his tanned face. However, nothing could eclipse the dazzling brilliance of this man's eyes. The color of them was even more remarkable than Anne remembered. Blue, blue eyes surveyed Anne with an unmistakable look of pleasure in them. "Be still, my heart," Anne breathed silently, her heart fluttering wildly. "Miss Anne Pierce?" the man questioned, as if amazed at the sight of her. "You remembered," she replied, blushing profusely. "How could I forget?" he protested, in a teasing manner, and most assuredly flirting with her. "And probably amused at my schoolgirl blushes," Anne thought in embarrassment. She raised her hand to her heated cheeks as if to wipe away the telltale sign of her discomfort. "Are you here on business? Perhaps I can be of assistance," the man offered. "She was looking for missing persons," the woman named Hilda interjected. "Missing persons," his attendant turned to the diminutive woman, a narrow frown in his eyes. "I'm trying to help a friend locate someone on the island," Anne explained. It was one of the many reasons she had explored as a reason for asking to see the missing persons report. "Is this missing person a visitor?" the man asked. Anne nodded affirmatively. "How long has it been since your friend saw this friend?" "Well, really, he was a man friend, and he sort of left, and she wanted to know if he was really gone. From the island, I mean. And I said since I was in town I'd see for her," Anne explained. The whole thing sounded lame and fabricated, and the discomforted woman was sure that neither of these people believed any part of the story. "Have you tried the airlines?" the man asked, as if endeavoring to be helpful. "Yes, she did," Anne replied, taking the fictitious narrative and expanding it with the first thing that came to her mind. "It wasn't a lover's fight or nothing like that. She's kind of worried." "And you are such a bad liar," she scolded herself. Every instinct yelled, "Give it up and get out of here." "I believe you might be best served at the American consulate. He's American, I presume," the man suggested. "Yes," Anne answered as calmly as if this was some normal conversation and not a joke. "How did you all know?" "Your accent," the handsome man replied with a smile that made him even more handsome. "If I'm not mistaken, Florida." "That's really good," Anne praised him. "I have friends in Jacksonville. I visit them occasionally." He brushed the compliment off modestly, although it was evident that the man was pleased with his presumed success. "It's Virginia, actually." The past of the real Anne Pierce came readily to Anne's lips. The beaming expression did not abate so much as 1 decimal, because she found herself almost giddy in this man's presence. "Hilda, could you direct Miss Pierce to the American consulate suite?" The man made the request to the woman, who had resumed her seat behind the desk, never taking his eyes from Anne. "Please forgive me for not escorting you personally, but I am frightfully late, and the governor's wrath will be upon my head if I delay any longer. But do not hesitate to call upon me if I can assist you," he apologized, as he took the mesmerized young woman's hand and held it for a fraction of a second. "Delightful to see you again," he added. Anne watched entranced as the man she had danced with so dreamily walked away from her. Then, after a few steps, he turned back to face her again. "I say, Miss Pierce," he called across the distance, "would you be so obliging as to leave your number with Mrs. Childs?" He motioned to the woman, staring in bewilderment after him. "You won't mind if I ring you up?" Anne nodded in awe-struck agreement as she watched him disappear out of sight. "Who is she?" she asked Hilda Childs, as she placed a notebook and a pen into her hand. "Don't you know?" the woman asked in astonishment. "I thought you knew each other." Not really, Anne shook her head, busy writing the address and phone number of the Cheval residence under her name. That's the governor's brother, Hilda replied, a noticeably fond curve to her smile. Ryland Delacroix. Recovering her breath and her sense of purpose, Anne made her way past the dragon, the title she had illogically bestowed on the sweet gray-haired lady whose eyes followed her as she made her way down the hall. Then she began to look at the small plaques that were on the doors for the missing person department. Despite the suggestion from the governor's brother, she had no intention of going to the American consulate. Then, as she reviewed her conversation with the man that before today had been safely consigned to a dream, her conscience began to work overtime. For the second time, she had lied to him, and that had to stop. She was almost beginning to believe this pretense herself, and so it was imperative that she find out who she was. She could not undo what was already done. Moreover, Ryland Delacroix was a real man, not a romantic dream. Nevertheless, everything about the man was dreamy and romantic. Anne paused mid-stride, unsure now of her actions. She wanted with all her heart and soul for Ryland Delacroix to like her as much as she liked him. Let him call, she prayed silently. I will do anything, be anything, for him to like me. The fact that today, quite by accident, the Prince Charming that she danced with seemed like a miracle, a good omen. This must be a sign. The man was always talking about signs and omens. This one was saying, stop. Stop trying to resurrect people in places that are as good as dead, and be content with what is now. That her prince remembered her name was enough to make the love-struck young woman's heart jump for joy. It didn't matter that the name was one that belonged to someone else. It was hers now. The Cheval family gave it to her, and no one was being hurt by using it, she reasoned piously. Until her memory returned, if it ever did, her old life was over. All she had to do was let the past go. Fate had done that for her anyway. Now she wanted to start a new life here with her friends and her new family. Anne turned on her heel and walked briskly back along the corridor that she wanted so desperately to enter only minutes before. She truly loved her life on the island. She loved her job, her new friends that she had made, and most of all, she loved the Cheval family. At that moment, the lost, nameless woman made a decision. She would stay Anne Pierce, and she would do whatever it took to be the kind of woman that the man called Ryland Delacroix, brother of the governor of St. Goulet Island, would want. There was one problem to take care of. Without hesitation, the bold young woman stopped her exit from the building and returned to the reception desk again. Mrs. Childs, Anne inquired amiably, with a grin meant to disarm any reluctance on the part of this woman to answer her question. Would y'all think it terrible if I ask you, is he married? The sweet little face lit up in a mirthful smile. No, dear, he's not, she answered cheerily. Flustered by the reaction of the receptionist, Anne thanked her and practically ran out of the building. She did not stop until she reached the bottom of the steps. Then she walked sedately away, a happy smile on her face. He is not married. He's not married. Her heart sang over and over again.